Welcome to a very special spooky episode of Beyond the Reels, in which I'm joined by Wizard Games Director of Game Studio, Simon Jagdhar. How are you doing today, Simon, and have you been gearing up for any frightening Halloween festivities?
Oh, I'm doing very well, thank you. As of right now, it's still a few days off, so I haven't gotten that far yet. But I mean, I'm sure my son, by the time the weekend comes, will be heavy into the Halloween mood, so to speak.
Yeah, getting ready for a bit of trick-or-treating then.
Yeah, exactly.
With the holiday sort of upon us, today we'll be looking at Wizard Games' latest seasonal slot release, which is launching just in time for Halloween, Treasures of the Count. But before we go into the slot, could you tell us a bit about yourself and the role you play at Wizard Games?
Sure. I've been in the iGaming sphere for about 12 years now, focusing primarily on slot games, slot development, slot design. I originally started out at NetEnt, where I was like a senior game product owner. I think what most people would call that is like a senior producer. And then from there, I moved on to head of game design at Pragmatic Play. And then now, as you said, here I am at Wizard Games as the director of game studio, basically responsible for the overall content strategy of the studio and the content roadmap. So I work very closely with our producer teams, our math teams, to create and develop new concepts that fit into our wider company goals, but also that content strategy that I had mentioned. So everything has to have a specific place within that strategy. Additionally, I'm also responsible for knowing the market in general, but also specific markets. I should know what's doing well in a given locale, be able to pick that game apart and be able to explain to anybody who wants to know why is that game doing well and why it appeals to people. Maybe it's something we want to leverage ourselves in the future and modify it and make it our own.
So I'm sure a lot of that strategy in recent weeks will have been sort of leading up to the Halloween holiday itself. Every year the industry sees sort of an abundance of spooky slot releases at this time of year. What sets Treasures of the Count apart from the competition, and what sort of opportunities do seasonal slots offer in terms of player acquisition?
Yeah, I mean, seasonal slots present a great opportunity just because of a lot of the work and effort that goes into the seasonal preparation by casinos and the work they put into that seasonal event. It's a very strong period of promotion, emails, text messages. Some casinos might go as far as like etching out a specific area on the casino homepage just for the seasonal game. So you might see the Halloween section or the Christmas section at Christmas time. So knowing this, providers have an opportunity to feature in all of that promotional activity by making and delivering an on-season game during that period. I mean, of course, a provider could dare to make an off-season game during Halloween and releasing it. But I think that game is likely to miss out on some very easy placement and exposure opportunities that might not be there in any other month. So when it comes to Treasures of the Count, at Wizard, we're very data-driven in terms of what games we make. So we're blessed in terms of we have a lot of data coming in, and we have a very deep catalog of well over 100 games. So we have some very good performers, but also some low performers, and also a lot of mid-level performers as well. And from all of that data, we can sort of come up with very good inferences in terms of what type of mechanic to develop and what approach to take in balancing that game. So with this particular game, we knew that we wanted to make a hold and respin game. Hold and respin works. It's very popular. It's a very well-recognized mechanic. We've noticed this especially in some of our key growth markets, that this mechanic just gets a lot of traction. But on top of that, we also know that we need to make it a little bit different to stand out vis-a-vis competitor games who might be leveraging the same type of mechanic or a similar mechanic. So what we've done with Treasures of the Count is we've added a multiplier element to the mechanic that can really escalate the cash wins when the conditions are met. So this adds another layer of action to a well-known feature, which I think will set it apart from the rest.
So you touched on this a little bit at the beginning of that answer. Obviously Halloween is a very popular theme at this time of year, but it won't be long until we sort of start seeing, as you said, like Christmas slots and stuff like that. So how long of a shelf life do you sort of think these seasonal slots have?
It's a really good question. I mean, I personally think it's indefinite. I think the natural inclination is to think that when you're making a seasonal game, when that season is over, that game will be doing very little, if anything at all. But I've seen instances in my own history, like years and years ago, back at NetEnt, when we started making seasonal content. What we did was we took some of our evergreen games and put some Christmas decoration on them. But then the following year, we decided to take it a big step further and make something truly original, full-on Christmas game. And that game was called Secrets of Christmas. And that game did everything we wanted it to do. Huge bonusing, huge free rounding, just an acquisition monster. But the big surprise from it, and that I didn't expect, and that I don't think anybody really expected, was that the game was being played year-round. The daily turnover tale on this game was absolutely incredible. The takeaway from this anecdote is that with all the exposure that goes into, or that can happen around a seasonal game, if you as the provider make a game that really resonates with the player, there's a good chance your seasonal game could be the biggest game of the year and have a life beyond the seasonal span. And just as another example of this phenomenon, in 2022, Wizards' biggest release was in fact our Christmas game, which was a game called Santa's Fortune.
Well, I think you can also sort of look at other sides of the entertainment industry as well, in the terms of like horror films and stuff. Although you get an abundance of them at this time of year, that's not to say that people aren't watching them all year round. But
true.
Back to slots. Why do you think we see like so many releases that are Halloween themed at this time of year? Like with studios often releasing sort of like maybe 2 or 3 on average each. Does it present a bigger opportunity than other holidays in the year?
I'm not sure Halloween necessarily offers more significant opportunity than, say, Christmas, which is by far the biggest seasonal event in our industry. But I do think that Halloween is a bit of a different animal in that if you take the right approach in your design, I think you can get a little bit more mileage out of it. So, for example, when we think about Christmas, there's a lot of very specific symbolism bound up in what we consider to be Christmas. Santa Claus, Christmas trees, Frosty the Snowman, all these different things, such that if you were to try to inject that symbolism into a game at any other time of the year, you'd have a hard time arguing that it's something other than a Christmas themed game. So Christmas has a very specific time and place in our psychology. But Halloween also has some specific symbolism attached to it. But I don't think it's absolutely necessary to use that symbolism to check off the Halloween boxes, so to speak, to check off the boxes that say, yes, you have a Halloween game. So, for example, you could make a vampire game or an Egyptian zombie game, which could surely work from a Halloween seasonality perspective. And it could still find clicks, but it might not have that strong visual connection to Halloween. It might not necessarily have jack-o'-lanterns or witches or anything like that. So I think players are more okay about trying out those games any time of the year, while they might be more reluctant to try out a Christmas game in summer, if you know what I mean. So I think, just as a more practical example, I don't think it's that unusual in our industry to have like staggered release dates, right, for a game. So you have different days where the game is released in different markets at different casinos, right? So if you release your vampire or your Egyptian zombie game in time for Halloween, fantastic. You're going to leverage those benefits that we talked about earlier. But if it goes out to other partners later, say in the spring of the following year, I think that game would still have legs to stand on because it's not overtly Halloween. And it's sort of like the reference you made before, like in Hollywood, they make horror movies all year round and produce them all year round. They don't always release just around Halloween. While there might be more of them, it's not a prerequisite to do it. If you were to do the same thing with a Christmas game, I think you're probably likely to get a few sideways looks. Like, what are you guys thinking here, releasing a Christmas game so far removed from Christmas, right? So I think the reason that some studios do several Halloween games is that they get the benefits of being on season, but also have a game or games that can still get traction post-season.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Now we'll look at Treasures of the Count. Obviously, the majority of slot gameplay does come from the base game. What can players expect from Treasures of the Count's base game, and how do you expect it to keep players hooked until they start to unlock bonus features?
I totally agree with what you're saying there. A good base game is critical to any game. So when we make our base game, we always aim to make it as entertaining as it possibly can be. We want to have good base game features that happen with a good frequency and have a reasonably good average pay to sustain the player's balance over time. The last thing you want to see is just, your balance dwindle away in a couple hundred spins. Something needs to happen to boost it back up again. So since our main feature in Treasures of the Count is a hold and respin with cash symbols, we also use cash symbols in the base game to sort of hint at what's going to come later in your bigger feature. So basically what you want to do is you want to land your cash symbols together with a collect symbol to cash them out. Sometimes you land several collect symbols, and then that makes it pretty much a multiplier for all the cash symbols that have landed. So this event happens with some pretty good regularity, but it has enough volatility and potential to it that you get solid wins from it, while also complementing the main feature of the game. So I think in this case, the cash symbols and the cash out feature in the base game of Treasures of the Count, it does what an ideal base game should do, which is you get some nice bursts of activity and excitement, and it gives you a sense of how good that feature can be given a little bit of luck.
Looking at the design of the game, obviously Halloween themed, but how does sort of the design process differ from these seasonal slots to maybe games that have more of a general theme?
When we create a seasonal slot, I think what we try to do more than anything is we want to cast the appeal net as wide and as far as we can possibly get it. So that means we need to take a deep dive into the data to understand what mechanics, what features, what profiles are resonating the most with our player base. But also taking a wider look at the market to see if there's anything trending that we can potentially use or incorporate into the game. What I wouldn't do is I wouldn't do something too niche, like a very hardcore, super volatile game for a seasonal. I mean, for us and the players that we have, such games, of course, they have an audience, but they don't show that wide-reaching, broad appeal that other game types and profiles display.
The slot offers a Count's Treasure feature that sort of allows base gameplay to eventually lead to a jackpot game mode. Would you say this method sort of leads to better results than sort of offering jackpot game modes like randomly throwing them at players?
Well, I should say with this this particular feature or game element that you're talking about, the aim wasn't so much to have players play the game because of it, but rather it was an attempt to sort of mitigate or solve a problem that I've observed in this type of game with player study groups. A good segment of players, when they see cash symbols spinning in their base game, they perceive them as kind of like line blockers or line killers, things that get in the way of you achieving your line wins. So you're spinning your base game, you're landing loads of cash sims, but they're not triggering on the cash out. But when you see them enough, you might catch on to the fact that, all these non-winning cash symbols are preventing me from winning on the other parts of the game, and thus affecting your hit frequency. But we added this element to the game to say, okay, we of course understand that cash symbols can be a nuisance for some, possibly even a point of frustration for others. But we tried to turn it around so that when those non-winning cash symbols are landing, you as a player are still getting something from it because we're collecting them. And when you reach that certain threshold of collecting enough of them, then you're going to get a free chance at the jackpot, effectively, as opposed to, just a bunch of dead spins. I think we've implemented this feature in a good way. Using a meter, there's two really big benefits. Firstly is that the player can see the endpoint. So they know, once I reach that endpoint, I'm going to get some award, or I'm going to get my cash prize, or I'm going to win a jackpot. But also what they do is they see how easy it is to reach that endpoint, because you'll see how quickly that meter fills up. And most importantly, you see that it's not going to take you thousands of spins to fill that thing up. It's just a couple hundred, then you're going to get your extra chance.
We've also got a count respins game mode that you mentioned earlier as a bit of a hold and spin type feature. What is the win potential of this game mode, and how exactly do the features within it work?
Yeah, so as I alluded to before, it's a hold and spin, but we've added a multiplier element to it. So it works like the classic hold and spin. You get your three spins. The whole idea is to get as many cash symbols as you possibly can. Whenever you get one, the spin counter refreshes back to 3, and you keep going like that. So the way the multiplier element of the game works is that if you fill up a column with cash symbols, then there's going to be a multiplier applied to that column. And this multiplier can go as high as 20 times whatever the cash symbol values are that are displayed within that column. In that hold and spin, or the count respins feature, that's where you can also win the grand jackpot. And that's going to be, that in this game is 2,500 times bet, and it happens just over 1 in a million spins.
Okay, great win potential there then. And looking at the operator side of things, so operators are obviously expected to be integrating a lot of Halloween-themed slots at this time of year. So how do you sort of expect Treasure the Count to stand out amongst the crowd?
I'm glad you asked. And I think this game will perform exceptionally well. I think one of the benefits of exclusive deals is that you get some indication of what might happen when your general release day comes. So we've had the game out as an exclusive for the last couple of weeks in 2 markets. And what we found in that period is that the game is tracking well above average in terms of our key metrics and KPIs. So I think that bodes very well for our casino and operator partners. I mean, you never know what can happen, but I mean, I think these early results give a very good basis to expect a solid performance.
Okay, and obviously Halloween around the corner, we're entering the last couple of months of 2023. What can our viewers expect from Wizard Games in the remainder of the year and beyond?
Well, next month is going to be a very exciting month for us, as we'll be releasing our first multiplayer game, which is a crash game called Right Flyer. This is going to be quite a big step for us. I think Right Flyer will be probably the first game in a long time that doesn't fit under the rubric of table game or slot game. So it's a big investment for us. We put a lot of effort into it, so we think it's going to pan out for us. As well, into 2023 and beyond, I think for next year anyway, I think most people will be seeing a lot of from us. There's going to be a lot more variety from Wizard Games. We'll be doing a lot more experimentation with more and different pay mechanics and game types, cluster games, grid slots, anywhere pays, and the like. So I think 2024 is going to represent a big step forward for us. Very exciting times ahead for the studio.
Yeah, very intriguing things to look out for then for our viewers, particularly that multiplayer game. I'll definitely be looking out for that. So thank you so much for joining us today, Simon, and I hope you have a happy Halloween, and for the viewers at home, thank you for watching.
Yeah, thank you very much, Danny. Honored to be here.